beautiful song and a beautiful lead-in. Good morning, peace seekers and truth keepers. How full is your bucket now? Yeah. Last week we talked about the only way to establish peace, to restore a state of peace, is to unclutter our souls, to unclutter our consciousness by simplifying. And simplifying means remembering the one thing, the one most important thing. And author Bill Hybels in Simplify 10 Practices to Unclutter Your Soul and fellow minister Peter Scazerro both agree that that one important thing is relationships. Our relationship to God, our relationship to others, and our relationship to ourselves. And so this morning, as we continue our restoration project, our do-it-yourself project, to restore peace in our consciousness and in our souls, we're going to look at the possibility that maybe you're here to love well. Maybe that's what it's all about. That it's not about success, it's not about the house, the car, it's not about anything, but just loving well. And how when you love well, you can't help but experience peace in your life. Peter Scazerro has written many books about emotionally healthy spirituality and the emotionally healthy church and leadership, and our leadership is going to be going through that process at the beginning of the year. He is also the founding minister of New Life Fellowship in Queens, New York. And there was a time in his ministry where he hit rock bottom, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and his bucket was empty, and he didn't know what else to do. And through that process, he discovered that he had a new ministry, he had a new purpose, and that purpose was to teach people a simple truth. That loving God and loving others is the essence of true spirituality. So for all of you who want to be spiritual, for all of you who want to raise up in consciousness, you can't do that unless you learn to love well. And as an example of loving well, he points to Jesus Christ, who was a master at integrating God's presence and loving others, particularly loving those that no one else in society was able to love. In Unity, we talk about Jesus as our way shower. At whatever Unity church you go to across the country, it's almost like a little mantra. Jesus, our way shower. Probably comes out of that tradition for many of us that grew up with Jesus, our Savior. So in Unity, we say our way shower because we are founded on this belief that Jesus was just like us. He wore the same suit of flesh. His heart beat the same way. And he had the same essence of God in him that we have in us today. The difference was he figured out that he was divine, and he made a life of living as the face of God each and every day. And so he shows us the way that we can live a life of peace, a life of love, a life as the divine, in walking, talking, breathing form. Jesus was once asked by a group of people when he was teaching, if I don't do anything else, if I can't keep all of the laws that are written in the book, what is the one thing that I must do? That's kind of like me. Cut to the chase. Don't give me 10 rules. Tell me the one rule that's the most important. Because I'm probably going to break all the other ones anyway. So Jesus pondered this, and he summarized all of the Jewish laws into two. And those two laws became his own personal vision and mission, his own purpose in his ministry. And we find those laws in Matthew 22, verses 37 through 40. First, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. We talked last week about filling our bucket, that bucket of energy, that bucket of life force in us, and that when we look at relationships, remembering the most important thing, that the very first relationship that we should attend to, that will fill our bucket, is God, Source, Buddha, Allah, whatever you call it, that thing that is all that is everything. So our first way to fill our bucket, our first way to tune into love is to connect to Source, to everything that is around us. Jesus then goes on to say, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the laws and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as that divine expression of God. In unity we say, I behold the Christ in you. What that means is that I see beyond what is here into the heart of you, into that which breathes you. And yet, how many of us have struggled with that? In fact, if you look at the Bible, we've been struggling since the time God breathed breath into us. So Charles Fillmore, who's Unity's founder, believed that the Bible was really a story for us, a story about us. That metaphysically, it is about us when we're asleep and how we wake up. Us when we're in this lower consciousness and we don't recognize our greatness. And waking up to the divinity that we are. And yet, if you look at the Bible, there are siblings killing each other off. There's men sleeping with other women and women sleeping with other men. And there's countries at war and communities that are fighting. And everybody's getting slain and burned and all kinds of stuff. It's actually a pretty violent history if you look at it. And yet, it's as if they forgot, just like us, that if you want to restore peace, you must first love well. Today in particular, I want us to think about this little community called Corinth. And the believers in Corinth that were following the way, which is Jesus' teachings, they were fired up. They were so excited. And they were growing in numbers, and new people were coming in, and they were out feeding the hungry, and they were giving money to the widows, and they were just doing so much in their community. And yet, there was this conflict, this rub going on inside the community. There were probably some of those who thought we should have healthier options whenever we go down for fellowship together. There might have been a group of people that thought that that scroll, it should be written a certain way and it should look a certain way. Or it could be that there was a whole discussion around chanting. More chanting, less chanting, a different kind of chanting. We don't really know, but I can pretty much guarantee that whatever that conflict was that was going on looks a lot like the conflicts that go on here sometimes. Because we're human beings. We have differences of opinion. And so the disciple that had kind of taken this church under its wing and was writing them letters and encouraging them and trying to uplift them felt compelled to close his last letter to them in this way. 2 Corinthians 13:11. Finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice. Strive for full restoration. Encourage one another. Agree with one another. Live in peace. And the God of love and peace be with you. Strive for restoration. Strive to live a peaceful life. Strive to be the face of God in your community. Encourage one another. Now, I believe that just about everybody in here is an encourager. I hear what you say to each other when you're embracing and shaking hands on Sunday morning. You know, how are you? How are things going? How's that job? How's your health? I've seen how this community comes together to pray for people, and how this community comes together to lift each other up. And I've had my own personal experience of that since I got here. From the moment I walked in these doors, I was welcomed. Before I was even hired, you took me into your fold and made me feel at home and encouraged me and uplifted me. And then there's that other piece. Agree with one another. So I have to admit, when I read that, I started laughing. Because it just so happens that my beloved and I had just had a discussion about agreeing and disagreeing. Now, I don't know about you. Yes, I do. I can almost guarantee that you, like me, know that there is a right way. There is a right way to load the dishwasher. There is a right way to mow the lawn. There is a right way that you should be driving on I-69 when I'm trying to get someplace. And you have a right to my opinion. How many of us operate in this sense that we have an opinion and we have a right to it and we have a right to share it with others, right? Or it could be that sometimes you're like me. This is confession time from your minister. Sometimes I just like to be disagreeable. Sometimes I like to just disagree for the sake of being disagreeable. It's kind of fun to argue. You know, especially if I'm really bored and I don't have anything going on, it's kind of fun to argue about whether the sign is green or not. I get a little charge out of that. So is the disciple saying to us we can't have our own opinions? We have to say yes to everything? We have to be doormats? No. Absolutely not. In fact, many of you went through a process at one time in disagreeing and agreeing in love. So it's not about having a difference of opinion, a difference in perception. It is about doing that in a loving manner and knowing that other people may not have the same thoughts that you do and being loving in that. So agreeing, I think in this sense, is about the second definition in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, which is to strive for or to be in harmony. So it's really about creating harmony, not being the same. As Cindy sang to us this morning, we're this beautiful tapestry of different colors, of different ideas, of different thoughts. But it's about learning to weave that together in harmony. So how do we create harmony in our relationships with other people? Peter Scazerro, in his book, Emotionally Healthy Skills, which is one of our pods, gives us 8 tools for learning to love well. And the 2 tools that we studied this week in particular, I think, speak to this idea of harmony. And the very first tool that he suggests we use to create harmony is to stop mind reading. Now, I know that you're the most intuitive people on the face of the earth. I know that you can sense what the other person is thinking and feeling. Yeah, you're wrong. You have no way of knowing what another person is thinking or feeling. And in fact, Peter references the 9th commandment, which is, thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. False witness. Anytime we make an assumption without confirmation, we're bearing false witness. Because we're telling ourselves a story about why is she looking at me that way. I know why she's looking at me that way. And why did he say it that way? Oh, I know why he said it that way. And so we create this story in our head. And anytime we have a story that's not been confirmed, not only is it a false witness, it also creates distance and disharmony. Because the truth is, we can't possibly know until we check it out. And I recently learned, much to my disappointment from Byron Katie, that even when I check it out, I'm probably going to get it wrong. Because you see, every time I listen to you, every time I hear you, my understanding comes from layers upon layers upon layers of my own experience. So I'm hearing you through the layers of my experiences. So even then, I may not get it right. But the antidote to mind reading is just that, is to seek more information. To be brave enough, authentic enough, transparent enough to say, so I'm telling myself the story that you said that because. Or simply to say, I think that you must be thinking, is that right? Check it out. That is the way that we come into, then we can come into an agreement. Then I can agree that I understand what you're thinking. And we can agree about what's going on. The second tool that he suggests is to clarify expectations. And so it's not that expectations are wrong. I think the minute that we start yelling when the doctor spanks our butt, we start having an expectation. Feed me, clothe me, do something. This isn't fun. You know, we immediately have expectations. It's part of our nature. It's part of our humanness. Where we get into trouble is that those expectations are often unconscious, unrealistic, unspoken, and unagreed upon. Unagreed upon. So I shared with my pod when we were talking about this that I do all the inside work, right? So I usually take care of the laundry, I vacuum, whatever needs to go on inside to keep the house clean. And so my expectation is that my wife, therefore, should take care of the outside. And that means carrying the trash to and from the curb. Yes, Judy, we're talking about garbage again. Now, that's right, we're trash talking in church. So it's not that my wife is incapable of taking the trash can to the curb. It's not that that is an unrealistic expectation. The problem is that in 9 years, I've never spoken it. I've thought it. And I have lots of thoughts when it doesn't occur. You know, I haven't spoken it. And not only have I not spoken it, I don't remember her once agreeing to it. Yeah, sure, sign me up to take care of the outside stuff. It never happened. Can you see how this could be a problem in your relationships? Absolutely. You know, what happened in that scenario, and what happens a lot, is mind reading in reverse. So instead of me reading your mind, my expectation is that you know exactly what I think. You know exactly that on our anniversary, I want to be taken out to this restaurant. And I want a card and a little gift card with some money. That would be good too. You should know that because you're married to me. Right? I go to the grocery store and you should treat me a certain way. I don't speak it, but you should, because you should be able to read my mind and know that I'm having a very hard day. And so you should be nice to me. I appreciate the wisdom of one of the writers in Proverbs. who I think was probably talking about this very thing. An intelligent mind acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. So I could probably line this sanctuary with the books I've read about spirituality, relationships, loving yourself, leadership skills, and I bet all together we could fill the building with all the books, all the knowledge we have about how it needs to be done right. That knowledge is useless to us, and it doesn't create peace, and it won't create harmony until we seek it, until we ask. The wise ear asks. We take time to clarify, is this what you mean? By the way, do you mind taking care of the outside stuff? Since I take care of the inside stuff, can we agree to that? It's about learning to agree with each other, and we can only do that if we first seek information. We are here to love, and to love well. To love well. And when we can love, then we can establish peace. The Bible promises that. Jesus promises that. Finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice. Strive for full restoration. Encourage one another. Agree with one another. Live in peace. And the God of love and peace will be with you